Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, and my co-host is somewhere in the United States, Brad McNichol.
I am in the town that supports this team, the Houston Astros.
You mean those? You mean those cheaters, those trash can bangers?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that lately. The Astros. We're in a stretch of 9 straight games against the 2 New York teams, and we have won. We have 2 of these games to go. We played 7 of them. We're 5-2. And the only 2, we had the lead and blew it late in the game. Could have easily won all 7 of the games so far.
You got to admit, I mean, 16 scoreless innings against the Yankees. That's the way the Yankees are playing this year. That shows something,
right? Including a no-hitter.
Yeah,
up in the Bronx. So hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers from the heart of Texas.
So just question, are you on your annual road trip type of thing right now? Okay.
Yeah.
You got the kid, the whole family is just doing the thing.
It's just me and MK. We went. Okay. Marty made the all-star team in baseball.
Oh, good for him.
He's staying there working the all-star stuff. He has practice or a game or something every day.
You know, Brian, you're getting to that stage in life where your kids are going to have other things.
Yeah, this is the 2nd straight year that he didn't get to go on vacation. So I told him, like, late this summer we'll figure out a way to just go away for a weekend or something.
You know, MK gets a boyfriend. She's like, Dad, I can't go.
Yeah. That's coming one day soon too.
But. Yeah. Sooner than you might wish.
Yeah, no.
I will say that apparently my daughter had some, more of those types of things than we ever knew before she got married. She was not very communicative on that type of thing. She didn't let us know about some of these boyfriend arrangements that, we just never knew.
Retro.
Yeah. It worked out fine. Yeah, I mean, she's about to have baby number 6, so it's just getting crazy.
Wow, that's working hard.
Yeah.
What a track meet that has to be. 6 kids, and they're all. What's the oldest one?
The oldest one is 10. He'll be 11. He won't be 11 until I think next February or something like that. I'm losing track now because the kids. She's got all these kids. I'm like, I think it's all under 10, right?
Yeah. Wow.
It's gonna be
a lot of work.
Yeah. Plus
a lot of fun too.
Plus, it's all by C-section on top of that, so she gets a gold star for that. We're for doing that.
Yeah, I am. Mary Catherine was born on my 43rd birthday, so 43 years with no kids, 17 with kids. I believe I've laughed more in the 17 than I did in the 43.
Yeah.
They really are pretty funny,
They are. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, this is the thing. I mean, raising a family and having the kids, I mean, that's all part of what it is. I mean, obviously not everybody can have kids that wants kids, and there's a lot of other those things, but when you've been blessed with children, it is a great ride. And
it really is.
Yeah. And so, I know you've been a great dad. You can, as we follow your exploits, at least the social media part of you.
Yeah, that's right.
The public facing
Brian.
Well, look, we have
a good time.
Isn't that though what social media tends to be, though? It tends to be more of that positive stuff. You don't see a lot of the sometimes people will share, when they've had an illness or a death in the family and things like that. And there are other people will share some other things, but in general, it almost seems to be a track meet to accentuate the positive, part of this and of your lives. Which I don't know, it may or may not be completely healthy, but I'm not the psychiatrist or whatever that gets into all that stuff.
Yeah, right. But we were able to keep up with each other in a way that we weren't before. And it makes you look for positives,
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of information shared. I think there's been a lot of things. There definitely are relationships and shared experiences that would not have been possible without the advent of social media. For all it's worth, I do say that it has a net positive effect in the long run. I mean, you can take the positive, you can take the negatives, but I do think that in general, it winds up being more positive than negative for us. And you have to be responsible. Okay, I mean, that's part of it too. You just can't you can't be a wacko.
There are positives and negatives to all these things. The social media, we trash it a lot, and it does, especially in the realm you and I work in, it does do a lot of damage. There is a lot of attacking and meanness and so forth, but it also connects people.
Right. So
like my whole graduating class from high school, we have a Facebook page, and the Facebook page is reserved for news about the class or news about accomplishments of the class or their kids or whatever. But it's also it's a pretty vigorous debating society on the other side. That's just it's not part of that page, right? But like we all know each other and we hash out issues, and and it's always done with you're somebody I love and respect, and we disagree. So you learn stuff, I mean, my friends on the left have taught me a lot of stuff, my classmates through social media.
Yeah, I would say that growing up here, I wasn't expecting a lot from my classmates. I mean, politics was not, I mean, we're talking about the mid 70s, not something that, occupied our minds, for ourselves, at least in high school. And
people, they can't remember what their mind was on in the 70s.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, then I get to this point where I think, one of my best friends all the way through elementary school and through high school, he wrote a letter to the editor for the student paper at the University of Maryland. So I managed to somehow connect with him and everything like this. And so we spent a little bit of time together. That was actually the last time I ever saw him, because, he took me over to his dorm room, and it was all like on gun control and all these things. The two of us had never talked politics before that point in time, really. And I'm thinking like, okay, I don't have anything in common with this guy. And I don't think I was ready to actually start, a debate and a discussion about that at that time. What social media has done, though, is it has, connected me with a few of my classmates that happened to be conservative that I didn't know what their political beliefs were. I mean, I really had no idea, what their political beliefs were. It wasn't something that was at the top of my mind. We were doing high school. We weren't doing politics.
Right.
Right. And we didn't have social media. So once again, you didn't have something there to drive it like you do today.
In my high school, your politics was what the priest told you it was.
So as we talk about politics, social media, politics, good segue into, what happened in the Supreme Court. I mean, they've had a raft of decisions, really kind of took, the left has taken it really to the chin there. But obviously the big one, the one that is still resonating here, and we're feeling the effects of this, is the end of Roe v. Wade. And, the Dobbs case, and then the second decision on Roe v. Wade. So it was 6-3 on Dobbs, 5-4 on Roe v. Wade, in essence. And this has really, I mean, we knew this was coming pretty much. I mean, we knew that based on the leaked documents, opinions, the draft opinion, that it was unlikely that the draft there was going to be a lot of change between the draft and the final decision. So there have been months for the left to prepare for this. And so, we have had this kind of mob mentality or whatever, but boy, I don't know. I mean, even with all this, just their reaction still just amazes me, the left, about how angry and mad and whiny and everything else they are about all this.
Right. And, I think what disturbs me the most about it is you have the Pentagon, you have HHS, you have the White House, others saying, we're in varying ways and to varying degrees, we're not going to follow this. We're not going to observe this. The Pentagon has said, it's facilities in states that ban abortion. We're going to do abortions there anyway. So it's you're setting up a power, conflict that should not be there, right? So there's a lot of they don't they don't respect the law like we do, right? So, I mean, part of this is, how did we get this? Part of, what bothers the left about this is how we achieved it, right? What did we do? We worked for 49 years. We had marches in the very, very cold winter of Washington, D.C. We worked for candidates. I mean, I know you've gone to the Grover meetings. I know I used to send Mal most of the time, but I know you've been there, and those people come and they seek support for people that outside of Washington. Grover Norquist is Americans for Prosperity. They have a meeting every week. They call it the Wednesday meeting, and all the groups in Washington, conservative groups in Washington, send someone to represent them, and they hash through the issues. Here's what's important, and people come before them seeking support, right? And what does Grover say? He says, how are they on guns, babies, and taxes, right? I mean, and if you don't give the right answer, we don't support you. Okay, so we held firm and to get the ideological uniformity we needed to do this. We went out and identified judges who shared our judicial philosophy. We won enough elections to put them on the court, and then they decided the thing in the favor of what we wanted, right? There's two basic theories of jurisprudence that dominate in America, right? And we found the people who were on our side, and we got them on the court by winning elections, by explaining to people what we were doing. Okay, and Bob's right. Sore loser syndrome from the left, right? And they did not. They said, we have a court decision we can depend on. Ruth Bader Ginsburg told them repeatedly that, you don't really have something you can depend on. You ought to work to shore up public support. You ought to work to pass laws that can't be easily undone to protect this. New York State passed this, it's a constitutional amendment in New York. It'll take, more work than it took to overturn Roe to overturn what New York has. Okay. So abortion's not going away in New York, and that's okay. I mean, I wish it would go away everywhere, but the American system, if we want to win the battle, we now have to go to New York and fight tooth and nail. And that could take another 40 or 50 years to convince them. But it is convincing people of your point of view. It is not, finding some bully to lay down the law that you don't have to defend it. It's up there for you, right? So we did the hard work. They rested on their laurels, and the tortoise caught up to the hare, right, and won the race. So that's what they're really mad about. It's not just that, we lose our right. You didn't lose a right. You never had a right. It is that the tortoise caught the hare. They know they didn't prepare. They know they didn't do the legwork on this, and they know now that it cost them.
Yeah. One little correction, because Grover will get very mad at you for saying it's Americans for Prosperity and not Americans for Tax Reform.
That's right. And Grover, we would probably hear from. Hey,
yeah. I'm not sure Grover.
What's McNichol drinking this morning?
Yeah. He's drinking the Coke juice.
The Coke juice.
Yeah. So right. So what do we get with this? I mean, as Bob says, sore loser syndrome. So the attacks now go onto the court too. It's like we have the left, we have the media saying, questioning the legitimacy of the court, right? They're all people like this, and then they're calling out the justices, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, saying, well, they lied, during their hearings.
Yeah, what nonsense.
Which they didn't. You brought up Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, if anything else, she probably kind of set the tone, during her own confirmation hearings when she was talking about, how can you ask someone about a decision without, about something that's just out there, that just pure conjecture that they don't have the facts in front of them or anything like this. They have to look at what is being presented to them. You cannot ask them about are you going to overturn Roe v. Wade and say this is the definitive, whatever you say there is on the record and you promise to it, because justices don't know. One, they don't know if the case was ever going to come before them, and they don't know exactly how it was going to be brought forward and what the facts were going to be. So it makes no sense to ask them to comment on something that's not even before the court, and when they're not even on the court. So, liberals, the left, they have a very short memory when it comes to that, right?
Right.
Ronald Reagan has, he said, he noticed that, with the pro-choice people, he says, I noticed that the pro-choice, supporters have already been born, right?
That's right.
And one of those things is like, I don't know, how many pictures have I seen of these pregnant women with their bellies, and it says, not yet a human, right? And it's
Right.
like, what is, I don't understand these people at all.
What is it?
Yeah. Please tell me what
Yeah,
that is.
a couple of things that, like, as you go through life, like, how do you handle the arguments? First of all, people say it's just a clump of cells. Bro, you are just a clump of cells, right? That's all we are, right? We can talk a little better than that one, but that's about it. It's just a learning process. The other one is, you mentioned that these people lied. Okay, so just so people understand, what they're accused of lying about is that they're asked a question: do they respect stare decisis, which means, you respect precedent. If a court has already decided something, you're slow to willy-nilly just change it. We're not changing stuff every 5 minutes, right? That's right. I never bad voted for a Reagan rep.
Go Ronnie.
Okay, so they asked them, "Do you respect precedent?" And no one can credibly be in front of them and say, "No, they don't respect precedent." Everything we have, we're just going to willy-nilly change the day I get in there. That's not what we're looking for in judges. For the most part, we do respect precedent. But that's not saying I refuse to ever overturn a law. And that's what they try to construe it as saying, right? And then you hear people like Susan Collins, who have a political problem on her hands, because people are like, hey, what do you think about all this? And she's like, well, I thought they told me they wouldn't change it. They didn't tell they wouldn't change it. And you full well know that, right? You know that. You're not telling the truth. So, don't accept that. Stare decisis is, saying you respect precedent is not the same as saying you will never overturn anything. And all those people know. So, you can already tell, like, there was polls out, I guess, last night, Jan 6 is not moving the needle. Abortion is not moving the needle. The needle keeps going in the same direction, and it's down for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to what Bob said, I mean, it is a sore loser syndrome, because they really kind of got that 1, 2, 3 punch there. I mean, you had the gun case in New York, the concealed carry that's thrown at, then you get this decision, and then it follows up with the decision about the football coach and the prayer after the football game. So you have these
all about 6-3, right?
Yeah, and so you're right, you have all this stuff, and so it's definitely. I mean, you definitely have this conservative court. I mean, Roberts joined with the liberals on the Roe v. Wade thing. He was trying to find a different ground for that. I mean, so it was 6-3.
I don't understand. What do you mean? I mean, what are you talking about? He found. I mean, he was trying to come up with some third way, but he ultimately voted 6. The vote was 6-3 for
Dobbs, but there apparently was a 5-4 ruling on Roe itself. There's a secondary thing that apparently that's what I was reading about. Then that's where Roberts joined with the liberal faction. That the stories there are that Roberts, he didn't really want to just make this decision on Roe v. Wade as it was. So kind of a typical Roberts kind of a thing. That we have seen with Roberts. Not people want to say
he's a Bush person. He doesn't really mean it, right?
Right. I mean,
they don't really mean it. They talk like about it, but they don't really mean
it. Yeah. So I mean, this has what he does doesn't really surprise me overall, and I he's been on the court for quite a while, but a lot of the observers say, well, this could be part of a defining legacy that he actually doesn't want.
Last night, so I'm in Texas, and we're talking about. They were telling me that the establishment wing of the party is attempting to push Dan Crenshaw for Senate for Cornyn's seat. And I said, good gosh, even George P. Bush would be better than that. And they're like, no Bush. No, never again. Not doing that to us ever again, which I thought was, pretty interesting. Like Texas, right? Texas saying we'll never be fooled by these guys again.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about George, P. Bush, but he doesn't seem to be the same as the rest of the family.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for him. He may be a far more acceptable Bush, right? But I mean, it's going to be hard to look past that name,
right?
All the destruction those people caused to the country and the party, and reckon, justify voting for any of them ever again. It's hard to do.
Yeah, and Hollywood, that's typecasting, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's like, Robert Blake was in the movie, the Truman Capote book. They killed the people in Kansas. What was the name of that book? I can't remember. And it was a Mutt and Jeff, deal, big guy and a little guy. And Robert Blake played the little guy, and they went and murdered the family on the farm in Kansas. And he was so good in the movie that he couldn't get a part for like 20 years because, he was the guy who killed those people in the movie.
that is the problem. I mean, that's the name thing, is that there's a lot of expectations. I mean, it would be pretty shocking, to see, a person that came a direct descendant of the Kennedy clan, going the other way. But it's not inconceivable, because just because the forebears, that doesn't mean that the descendants don't have a different mindset at some point in time, generationally. I mean, we definitely see this, with conservative, names where the descendants have all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're running as an ultra liberal Democrat or something or other, or they're espousing left and that definitely has happened, and we've seen that in the in the donor field. I mean, both you and I have have been into the fundraising side of the conservative field, and there are conservative families who are now there where the money is now being run by liberal children, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it happens. Funny thing about this Reagan thing with Bob too is just that. So before the show, I'm listening. The Reagan Library has got a wonderful podcast that they produce. They cycle through lots of Reagan speeches that he's given throughout his life, from the time he was governor, when he wasn't governor, when he was president, and all this. And the one I'm listening to now, he was talking about supply side economics and taxes and kind of how that came to be. And what he's saying here says, like, well, he says really my viewpoint on this was shaped when I was an actor, and I saw 94% of my earnings being taken away in taxes. So it's a pretty stark thing. All of a sudden you're like, oh, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you see most of your earnings going to pay all kinds of taxes, and you're like, no, this is not the system I want.
I've always said fully half the conservative movement signed up the day they got their first paycheck. And, I was working $10 an hour for 40 hours, and I'm counting on my 400, and it's like $239, and I have questions, right? And that is how people become conservatives.
Yeah, it's a pretty rude awakening.
That's the other reason I always say, if you want to cut spending, your taxes and spending in America, quit deducting from paychecks. You make people write that check every month. You owe the government, $700 this month in taxes, $800 in taxes for all the stuff they buy that we don't need. Then we will start having some real truth on what we actually need, right? You actually had to stroke that check, or transfer that payment out of your account every month. You saw that $800 or whatever it is go away every month, right? You would start paying a lot of attention to where every penny of that went.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like I like that idea on the surface. I don't know how it really works, in practicality, just because. I mean,
you'd have a massive compliance problem, right? Because people wouldn't have the $800, right? But that problem would not last long, right? Yeah, that would have to get fixed on both sides quickly.
But to me, there's no greater lesson, in the sense of taxes, is when you're physically forking over the money and writing the check. In Maryland this year, this is probably the last year it'll happen. They delayed the taxes that are due until July 15th. So I've got in 2 weeks, I'm going to be writing a couple of checks. I've got to write to whatever I owe to the state of Maryland for my 2022 that didn't enough that none enough got withheld. 2021, plus I have to pay some estimated taxes to kind of make up for that. And the way because of this this delay, there are two estimated payments now due in July plus the 2021 payment. And I'm thinking like, here comes D-Day. But does it make me mad? Does it make me realize, how bad the tax system is? Yeah, it just reinforces. I'm writing a check to pay my taxes. Yeah, it's a reinforcement. It's like you've got to change the system. And in Maryland, I mean, they're dilly-dallying about this gas tax holiday and all this other stuff. We've got a 7 cent a gallon increase coming on gas taxes on July 1st. Thank you, Martin O'Malley and the Democrats. You put that into effect about 10 years ago or thereabouts. And I didn't realize until I read further into it. I thought it was really just the rate of inflation, but I never could figure out from the time it started as to why, 10 years ago it was 18 cents a gallon and it's going to go to 43 cents a gallon. I'm like, it's more than doubled in 10 years. That's not the rate of inflation in 10 years. But there was another little formula in there about something about sales tax on the wholesale price or whatever. And so it's a secondary calculation, and that has another big effect. So all of a sudden, the gas tax in Maryland will effectively increase 19.2% on July 1st.
Wow,
that's a whopper. Even Peter Franchot, who's running for governor, wants something to be done about it. And he's arguing with the governor of Maryland about who has the power to do it. But nobody's calling for a special session to deal with it. But once again, I don't like those taxes. But I've railed against these holidays. Joe Biden wants to do, he wants to spend the federal gas tax. For the average person, it's not going to make a lot of difference. But if you cut their income taxes or do something else, you can do something else that's much more meaningful for them and will put more money in their pocket for which they could spend on goods and services. The gas tax thing.
Well, you could just revert to Trump's energy and economic policies.
Yeah, well,
you really want to just deal with the problem.
Yeah, like Biden is going to go ahead and just say, "Oops, I made a mistake."
Yeah, you know what? Okay, he does that, and he says, "Whoops," and for 2 weeks, me and you and everybody else in conservative media laughs at him, and then his poll numbers start going up. Right, price of gas goes down, inflation goes down, people start being able to handle the new normal. It's like we were driving down the road and we saw gasoline for $4.10 a gallon. And we're like, wow, that's so great. Let's try to run out of gas at that station, and that's just one place we saw it, right? Everybody else, 420, 450, 480, whatever. Right. And I don't know, I've been gone from up there for a few days now. I don't know what's going on with, it's really volatile and in a lot of the country, right? And so, if you're happy with 410, they've changed the game, right? We've gone from happy with when it broke below 2 to happy with it's down near 4 again, right? They've really moved the goalpost on this. So if he would just get things headed back in the Trumpian direction, he really would benefit. And he'd have 5 minutes of bad publicity for admitting Trump was right, but he would win election in 2024.
Yeah, no, I mean, right. Instead of all this, jawbone, the threats about windfall profits taxes, and you got all this stuff like this, all these financial penalties that he wants to throw on them. And, you can go back and say, let's open this up. Let's get let's get the leases back up there. Let's get the drilling up there. Let's lessen the regulations so the refining capacity can be expanded. We're out of refining capacity. We're running in the 90s. We cannot refine. We don't have the capacity to refine enough fuel to meet all the. So we've put ourselves in this position, and Joe Biden and the left has been a large part of all of this, right? That they wanted to placate the left, and on day one they started just throwing all these things into there. And we're feeling the effects of this a year and a half later. I love to blame the oil companies, right? Like, were the oil companies not greedy during Trump? Did they just discover greed in 2021?
what made them decide? I mean, other than the price of oil tripling in a matter of months, what made them decide to raise the price?
Yeah, and it's not
Why
like
did they go on a greed binge, right?
Yeah. I mean, and when we had the pandemic and demand fell and their profits evaporated, I mean, there's no big rush to go help the oil companies. We still need them, but but it's all this anti-fossil fuel talk, right? We have to electrify America. As one of these guys on one of these podcasts I was listening to, talking about it, says, well, as long as the price of electricity doesn't soar, and like, yeah, people are thinking, the left, they really fully believe that electricity is cheap and will remain cheap. But once again, demand shifts. When the grid is already straining and you want to electrify, you want to put all these EVs on the road that need to draw more power. Exactly where are you going to get this? And how are you going to be able to generate this through your clean energy standards? You want wind and solar and things like that. You don't want coal and natural gas or whatever to help power these things. So you're trying to move in this direction, but you don't have the ability to do so to meet the demand that will occur. And then, I mean, Texas. I mean, look, Texas. You're in Texas. Texas. I mean, I think the grid operators down there are already talking about, how they're going to try to manage things in the future after that big disaster they had in the winter, and that prices are inevitably going to go up. To try to get a better hold of this. Well, okay, guess what? That is coming. That will happen. I mean, it's just not like electricity prices are going to, they're locked in, and that this is the only price you'll ever pay for the rest of your life. So that way, electric car looks relatively cheap over the lifetime of an electric car. And look at what's happening to the EVs. The cost of the materials has gone up, so the cost of EVs has gone up. Ford even announced they announced recently that on that Mach EV Mustang that they produced, they have to adjust the pricing because the cost of the materials went up so fast that they are losing money on every sale of their EVs.
Yeah, and those engines operate less efficiently, which means to move that car down the road takes more fossil fuel than a gas engine. You can say, oh, well, you have exhaust from the gas engine. That's a whole lot less your problem than the idea of trying to run the economy on 11% of its current energy supply, because that's all that you have any right to expect out of renewable energy, and that's only in peak conditions, right? Wind stops blowing, sun stops shining, which happens sometimes, especially in the winter. You've got big problems, right? You have no, your pipeline infrastructure is decaying, and the government wants to kill it off anyway. For natural gas, which that's the only way natural gas moves, as well as oil. You have offshore oil drilling ends tomorrow. After tomorrow, there won't be any more permits active to drill offshore in the United States. So I don't know. I probably should get home before the $8 gas is here. Right?
Yeah, at least since you've been gone and whatnot. I mean, gas prices have been leveling off a little bit, but it's not. This is not a Biden policy that is doing this. Actually, these are market forces right now. But I mean, demand is still high. Summer driving season, but what's tamped it down a little bit is the fears of recession, which Biden has said is not inevitable. Which hasn't exactly put a lot of confidence in a lot of people. Like,
they may avoid it. An asteroid may hit the Earth, and that would be better. So
I don't know.
Which brings me to the government's not having much to do with repairing the economy or fixing the energy problem. Also, I guess one of the things on our list is we're talking about Turkey, Finland, working it out with Finland, Sweden to join NATO.
Right.
You read those stories, who's not present in any of those stories? The country that pays the bills for NATO. This happened independent of us. Okay, it's fine now because it appears to be an outcome that we nominally approve of, I suppose. But NATO can operate without the United States. We're going to get some outcomes that we do not want out of that. So that's kind of, it's good news, bad news deal, because it's kind of a dangerous thing happened.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, and we're at, what did I have down here now? Day 126 now of this whole thing. And then, one of the bigger stories. I mean, there are a lot of people, I think, that are kind of getting the fatigue of this because it's been going on for 4 months plus now, and doesn't look like it ends anytime really soon. But we had that mall that was bombed by Russia. Russia claiming this was a weapons depot, but even CNN reports, they're like, you can clearly see that this was not a weapons depot. 18 people were confirmed dead. There's like at least 20 missing. A lot of people were injured. They're trying to clean this up, but they dropped a huge bomb on that thing. I mean, this is a what was like up to a 1,000 kilograms. I mean, something that they would hit at a warship or some bigger target. You know, Once again, this is Putin is not, he's willing to hit civilians. I mean, this is just naked. He's not hitting military targets. He's hitting civilian targets and really trying to pound the people into submission this way. I find this abhorrent behavior. I just don't know how to stop it.
Well, he also, like, when the army is in Ukraine, he orders, they want depredation. They want, raping kids and all that kind of stuff. They want the populace to say, please make this stop, surrender, so that they stop doing these things to us individually too, So, there's nothing worse than the Russians and where they are and all this. So there's two schools of thought emerging. One is they're turning the tide, and it's just a matter of time. See how long Ukraine can hang on, but it's not going to be that much longer. The other is that the Russians are running out of material. So, that they didn't have a whole lot to begin with, and that they'd have to spend a whole lot more than they thought. What are we up to now? I'm looking at 123 more days than they thought it was going to take. So, it's individual. It's hard to tell. There's so much misinformation coming out of there. But if they're running out of stuff, then it may make sense to just bleed them dry, just keep it going long enough to leave them without anything, leave them vulnerable. Yeah, it's interesting to me to, like, at what point would Putin cut bait or look for a way to save face or whatever?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would think that every time Putin does one of these things, like he bombs a civilian target and you lose dozens of lives or whatever, and you have dozens of injuries, that the NATO aligned people and plus other countries are just out there saying, okay, we need to keep supporting this, because this is not a military operation as much as, I mean, he is really wiping out parts of the civilian population. And, we can't do that. That's crossing the line. There's no military strategy involved in bombing a civilian target like a mall,
Right.
So I think every time he does it, I think it does, help the resolve of those that are helping Ukraine with materiel. To the extent that they can. I want to go back to Roe v. Wade real quick, because I did want to ask you this question too, about one of the things that came out of this was this litany of corporations that said, if you want to go to a state that performs an abortion, we will pay the travel expenses. I mean, what do you think about that? There's a lot of them. There are big ones, small ones. There's a lot of tech companies in there and things like that. What does that tell you about these corporations?
Well, I mean, they have these, DEI things they have to fulfill, and they probably got bonus points for that one, right? The diversity, equity, inclusion, right? You have to score a certain amount on that to be, be eligible for venture capital from, the big left venture capital funds such as BlackRock, right? They're attempting to mold behavior, right? Using money to mold behavior, investment, startup money, and so forth to mold behavior. I think it's despicable that anybody is paying people to go have abortions. But, on the other hand, we've got it to where it's not a right anymore. You're not guaranteed it. The reason they're doing this is because some places are being, have regained the power to outlaw it. Right, where their citizens say we don't want this within our borders, and they're getting able to assert that power. So, There's other people, who are willing to do it. Their states are willing to do it, and there are, then they're going to move those people. I mean, it's, I'm uncomfortable with, we're talking about, catching people crossing state lines and so forth. That to me, that's not, you're going to run afoul of a bunch of constitutional problems there, commerce clause and so forth. I'm not comfortable. I wasn't during the pandemic. And, I remember at one point, Texas closed its border and wouldn't let anybody from Louisiana in, right? Because we were behind them in testing and so forth, right? So, those things that, that could lead to a lot of bad stuff real quick, and it could get real bad in a hurry, right? So I'm not for that, for those laws. I think it's, we're to the point, we've won the legal battle. It's time to win the hearts and minds.
So reading Bob's comment here.
Yeah, I think Bob is right that Erdogan was going to just get some concessions out of it. He wasn't going to oppose it forever.
Right.
He just opposed it to stake a claim, right? So he's been paid whatever they agreed to pay. There's also, he had some issues about, I guess, dissidents from Turkey were being accepted up there. And, he gets to rattle the cage on that and so forth. But that's right.
Yeah. And we talk about, you mentioned BlackRock, which has definitely being, they manage, what is it, well over $1 trillion of assets. They have
$7 trillion or something.
Yeah. I think at least $1 trillion of that are in the ETF sector. And so, they have a lot of sway on with shareholder proposals, resolutions, and whatnot. And so, if BlackRock gets behind something, and they're very big on the ESG and all these things like that, it does put some pressure on corporate boardrooms. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about Citigroup and, their efforts, with guns and gun, all the things on the Second Amendment type of stuff like this. Was it was that the credit card thing from years ago? Was that Operation Choke Point or something like that? I can't remember exactly what the name of that was, but
yeah, well, Operation Choke Point was they ruined the banking services for businesses that it's like, yeah,
right, yeah. So the article, what was interesting is that they had apparently Citigroup had been a financier of when was it Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's merged. They helped provide the financing for that. So they thought, oh, maybe we can, we had a relationship with them. So they went and to meet with the CEO of Bass Pro Shops, and guy apparently is a big celebrity. Everybody loves this guy, and they wanted to convince him to kind of support more gun law type of things like this, and reduce the reliance on this stuff. For which he basically said, they basically agreed to part company. Citigroup got nowhere with him. So, good on him for that he didn't bow to any of that. But there's Citigroup trying to go to people where they provide, financing for deals and saying we want your support for what we're doing on this type of thing to, restrict gun ownership, et cetera. And, this guy Morris, I think his name is Morris, he wasn't having anything to do with it. So they they were, I think Citigroup was disappointed. They failed in their effort for that. But now that's part of the battleground now, right? I mean, it's using this kind of a thing to go on.
Try to force corporations to do what you want to do. And, you got people's jobs hanging in the balance and so forth. It's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a story that I didn't read fully that Amazon workers want a work stoppage over Roe v. Wade. They're trying to rise up and say this, but there's nothing in general that's.
Oops. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, Don.
Are you near a bell?
Maintain the discipline to do that, okay?
Well,
okay, I think that's it. It's not even like an hour. It's like,
I know.
What the heck is going on?
That's just the warning bell.
Yeah. It's like the third race is about to start.
Yeah.
They're loaded into the gate.
Yeah. What the heck are you near over there? But it just I don't know. I mean, the workers, all of this stuff that they're getting all excited about but look, if you want to go and have an abortion, there are states. You talk about, you can go to New York where they've made a constitutional amendment to their state constitution saying, it's there, it's codified. Go ahead and do it. There has been that knee-jerk reaction in the play on the media and the left. It's like abortion in America is dead. Well, there are a lot of us that,
we banned abortion. No, we didn't.
There's a lot of us that say we wish that wasn't around there, but the states have a right to go ahead and do what they do. And if you're a very blue state, chances are you're probably going to do something to make sure that it stays legal in your state. That fine, right. Okay.
Well, we need to heed the lesson that they just learned, which is do not sit on your laurels. It's still a battle for hearts and minds on this. Right. A future court could reverse that. A future court, could undo everything that happened there. And these states would, the Democrats are now motivated to work to put their judges on the court. So,
and you mentioned earlier too, it's like, talk about, January 6th, all these things not moving the needle. The Democrats, they're hoping that these things move the needle. I mean, they're trying to, right in the primary season, they're thinking like, okay, will Roe v. Wade have an effect on any of the primaries that are going on now and will happen in the future? Will it help us in the general election? Because but polls still show that gas prices and inflation tend to be the top two things. Yeah, you got
some dogs out there too.
There's some things you just
got it going on here, man.
That's what I love about live shows. But those, the issues that the Democrats want to focus on are really not going to move the needle, whether or not it's the primaries or in the fall, because you and I don't think either one of us see inflation falling by much of it at all. And gas prices don't seem to be trending downward in a big enough fashion to make a difference. And those are pocketbook issues that people are feeling an effect. They're feeling an effect they haven't felt in 40 years. And for most people, the first time in their lives they've ever seen it, right? Because it's been 40 years since inflation has been this bad. So,
and the primary turnouts, right? They had some primaries last night. And all the Republican turnouts, even in blue areas, went way up, and Democrat turnouts went down. So, I mean, it's still trending against them, even in blue areas.
Right, and that's the other part of it. I mean, how do even if somebody, I mean, I think there was it one of the Illinois primaries? I mean, where the candidate who said that they were going to work to overturn, this whole thing, or to work for more liberal justices, beat the incumbent. But we knew that a lot of these things were probably already baked into some of these people anyway on the Democrat side. But that's not much of a litmus test, because the turnout for the Democrats was low. And so when you have low turnout, you can't really extrapolate that to much of anything. People are, all it showed was that people are basically disinterested no matter what.
Well, their most motivated voters, this is now a goal for them. That's what, you got some people off the bench with this, right?
Right.
Some of the Democrats are now like, okay, we better go get our judges in place.
Yeah.
Right? You can whine about what happened with Merrick Garland or whatever all you want, but it was completely legal what they did. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just a trick that you didn't think of first.
It's very difficult, though, whatever momentum they think they have right now, we're at the end of June, that they're going to have this 4 months later. People kind of, they react, they're mobilized, they're out there. I mean, the left does a great job of getting people out, but 4 months from now, there's a lot of other stuff that's going to be going on.
It's not happening now. It's going to be, a lot less than 4 months, which, judging from their past patterns, you're going to see more things done to like tug at the heartstrings. Like this woman who testified before Congress yesterday, and apparently pretty much everything she said was vastly untrue, right? And people marched right out to say, oh no, I was there, and she's full of it, right? So, their whole, it was like the Ballsy Ford thing, we got this mystery woman witness out of nowhere who happens to tell exactly the story we need told, right? You know, it has it all on hearsay or whatever.
I'm a little bit puzzled about the thing about Trump reaching for the steering wheel. Was he sitting in the passenger seat next to the driver? Were they driving a compact car where they were kind of like this so he could reach over and do this? I mean, the presidential limousine is not a small car.
Well, he was in an SUV. He wasn't in the Beast.
Supposedly. Okay, he wasn't in the Beast. All right.
But he's in the back seat of a big, Escalade or whatever SUV. Right? He's not reaching no front seat. He's not fighting a Secret Service agent. The Secret Service agent who was driving the vehicle says no such thing happened. The lead agent in charge of taking care of him says no such thing happened. I mean, it didn't happen. They just made stuff up. They just found some person out of nowhere to spout their stuff, and they got caught. It's the same thing that it's Blasey Ford, it's Jussie Smollett, it's all those, people who come out of the woodwork and tell exactly the lie that they need at that moment.
Yeah, look,
right? And the more narrowly tailored the lie, the more that you could rest assured it never happened.
Yeah. So one thing that bothers me about this is so they put these people under oath. So then everybody says, okay, if they're under oath, they must be telling the truth. Well, you can perjure yourself. I mean, you can do that. I mean, then you're going to face a whole other
the ones that I left on Twitter is like, why would she lie? Blasey Ford got $1.5 million for it and a new house and all this stuff and all these people who love her and do everything they can to take care of her. It was very profitable to tell that lie. And that one was exposed as a lie, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, there are a lot of these people that are not up there. It's like, I didn't even know who the heck she was. Right.
Yeah.
She now she's famous or infamous or whatever.
She's in every major conversation. She heard all the stuff.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what she could get?
You're a 23-year-old intern. You were around nothing, right? We all know that.
And what was it? I mean, part of it was like, I overheard Trump saying about this thing. I was like, I overheard. Exactly how credible is I overheard? That type of thing. If he's not speaking directly to you, then what's the credibility there? I mean, I just had a lot of trouble. Look, I am not going to excuse Donald Trump's behavior or anything like this. I think things could have been handled a heck of a lot better on January 6th. No doubt about it. I mean, and a lot of things could have been avoided on January 6th. And me, I am not a conspiratorial guy. I don't have this gene that says election was stolen and all this kind of stuff. People can believe what they want to believe, but I don't want to go deep into that, down to that rabbit hole. But the January 6th Commission throws all these people out there, right? And they're doing this, and all these people out there are doing the bidding of the commission. And so you get the media reactions like, "Oh, explosive testimony," and blah 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 blah. This is like, come on, let's take a step back here. I mean, this is a show trial. I don't care what what. There's very little in here that sways me one way or the other. And I'm not the big Trump guy, right? It's like, tell me something that really would say, oh, I really have to hate Trump and things like this. I just don't. There's just not enough for me. I mean,
it didn't happen. Yeah, they tried and they failed.
4 years of Donald Trump, watching him in the White House, I'm like, uh-oh. Maybe those bells were foretelling something else here. All right, folks. Let me see. I'm going to give Brian a minute to come back here and everything like that. Hey, Bob, what do you think happened to Brian here?
There we go.
That was the left. They wanted to silence you.
You don't think there's censorship, folks? Did you see that?
There's some Beto O'Rourke person in Texas that's after you.
Yeah, pull the plug.
Anyway, we got to wrap up
here, buddy.
All right. Anyway, that's a good signal that we're on the last word here. Final thoughts, last word. Whatever.
Well, one of the things we did not get to was the New York gun ruling. Right, that's a huge thing because what happens is there's shall issue and may issue, as you well know. Right, may issue says, if you meet all the requirements and I decide you're a good guy and whatever else we want to put on here, right, then you can have a gun permit. Shall issue means if you don't know that I'm a felon or otherwise facially ineligible, you shall issue me the license, right? And so that's a big victory for conservative gun owners, right? That changes the whole sculpture or shape of how those laws are approached. That's a big doggone deal. What else is on here that I wanted to say?
There's another
Yes,
comment
the
from
more than 1 million voters have switched to the GOP. I think that's a biggie. And there's the other court ruling of significance this week was that the football coach in Bremerton, Washington, was fired for praying on the field after games, kneeling down and having a prayer. Players weren't forced to go. Not all the players went, but this was establishment of religion. What the court held here is important. The court held that preventing religion is also establishment of religion. So, the lack of cross-examination. I've said all along, Nancy Pelosi should have let Jordan on that committee, right? He says whatever he says, but at least, whatever you can prove over Jim Jordan's objections, the American people would have to accept, which is you've got two stooges there doing your bidding for you. Everyone knows what they know about it. So yeah, the football coach can now pray. I think that, we need to be freed from the notion that, forbidding of religion is not establishing religion, right? Because it is. You're establishing a religion of, no religion allowed. And that's not acceptable to you or me or most Americans.
Right. And doesn't that kind of follow along on that? Was it the Maine case? I mean, with the school vouchers or something like that, you had rural areas, right? And so the court
overruled the Blaine amendments, which was a huge thing, right? You're back in the early part of the 1900s. There were all these amendments that started out in Maine, right? Which is another thing no one talks about. But these anti-Catholic things, so Catholics could have their schools, but they get no help. Their students get no help, and all this stuff. And there's all these laws that have been made over the years to punish Catholic schools basically for being Catholic. And so.
Okay. I don't know if he's going to come back, but I think we're at the end of the show nevertheless. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And if Brian comes back, I'll pop him on. Okay. One more time, Brian. You may want to actually close out here.
Yeah. All right. So I think I've spouted enough. I think Beto has had enough of me.
Yeah, those are the signals. I was closing off the show, waiting to see if you'd come back. But so as also everybody, please stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America. Have a great 4th of July, everyone out there. Brian, I don't know are you going to be in Texas for the 4th?
No, I'll be in Tennessee.
In Tennessee for the 4th. Great, be in the South in the 4th. I mean, that sounds like a great recipe for a lot of fun and a lot of patriotism. Okay. Enjoy it. Remember, like I said, we've got a great country. Let's go out and enjoy it. We're past COVID. We don't have to worry about Elmo getting the jab. All these, that one just puzzles the heck out of me, whatever. But yeah, everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy it. Revel in America, revel in our spirit. And then we'll see you again next week with another exciting edition.